now, and attention already starting to shift to the next wave of traffic measures. Last night, city councillors debated whether to oppose two key county council schemes: traffic filters and workplace parking levy. Councillors don't agree on whether these schemes are right for Oxford City. Joining me in the studio now are Councillor David Henwood, who backed the motion to oppose the measures last night, and Councillor Andrew Gant, the County Council's Cabinet Member for Transport Management. Morning to you both.
Morning.
So, David, I'll start with you first of all. The motion against these schemes did fail yesterday.
Yes,
so
it did.
How are you feeling about that?
I'm not surprised. There are several, or actually many councillors within the City Council that are actually in favour of increasing the congestion charge to a bus filter scheme that will cost £70. Not only that, cars won't be able to go through, so it will create yet another barrier. And the workplace parking levy, Sophie, could cost employers up to £900 or £600 per parking space.
So is this your concern here, is the impact on people, key workers, businesses?
People trying to get to work and serve Oxford. And those are the people that keep us running and keep our hospitals moving and keep our schools learning.
All right, well, Andrew is here too. Listen to that. Andrew, you know these schemes, you've said before why you think they're important. You acknowledge too they are not popular with everybody.
Well, these schemes have been part of county council policy for decades, supported by all the parties who've been in the administration of the county council, and they will make the city a better place by reducing congestion. They make our streets safer, they make it easier to get around. The workplace parking levy, crucially, generates considerable income, which will then be recycled into significant improvements. We have already delivered much better bus services, free park and rides, safer streets, cleaner air, electric buses, and the workplace parking levy takes that whole process onto a new level. And I must just say, you've got Councillor Henwood sitting alongside me here, his very first words were wrong. He said that the filter is a charge of £70. That's just false. The £70 is a fine for violating a regulation, exactly the same as if you get a parking ticket or something now. It's not a charge. It's not.
Although a lot of this, I think, if people are listening, they'll think, well, does the wording actually matter?
Yes, of course it
you
does.
will
It's
have
a
to pay
fine.
£70 if you go through it, if you get fined.
Well, it's a fine. Yes, that is a fine for violating a regulation. You will not pay £70 to go through it.
Yeah.
But it's, I think a lot of people listening will be thinking, oh, stop nitpicking over the words. This is more things that are impeding me coming into work. We've spoken to key workers. We had a key worker nearly in tears the other day, with these two jobs and unable to use the bus to get to the two jobs in time and looking at losing one of those jobs.
And of course, very important to repeat that the traffic filter scheme and the congestion charge does not prevent anybody from accessing anywhere in the city by car at any time. It simply doesn't do that. What it does is manage where traffic goes so that congestion is significantly reduced at the places where congestion is worse, which is a significant problem. It is dangerous. It causes bad air quality. It produces conflict between different kinds of road users. Everybody knows what the situation has been like at the Plain Roundabout. My administration is taking responsibility for making our streets safer and better.
I wanted to ask you about that, David.
Yes, the Plain Roundabout is a very good example. And under Andrew's leadership, we've seen a higher fatality rate for cyclists in that area.
I mean, you surely can't blame that on him, though.
No, I'm not blaming it on him. I'm blaming it on the policy, of course.
That's a disgraceful thing to say.
No, Andrew, let's face facts. Let's be really bluntly honest. Congestion has caused several issues within that area. The LTN scheme could have been removed. You could have looked at it. You could have introduced one-way streets. You could have reconfigured the area to make it safer for cyclists. You didn't. You kept on this course of punishing motorists, and yet still you can't see that bigger picture.
But isn't part of these schemes, they are reducing congestion, if that's one of the things you're worried about, David?
Well,
this will do that.
It's been imposed for a month now, and it hasn't solved the issues around the Plain Roundabout or in the that area, around that area. So it hasn't solved the problem, but it has created yet more problems where businesses are now seeing their income failing from Monday to Friday with a 50% drop. Not so much on the weekends, but definitely that Monday to Friday period where they're struggling to get people into Oxford to buy their wares.
And so is that all business? Who have you spoken to? Like when you say
yesterday we
businesses?
talked to about 11 people within the covered market who are traders and protested in front of Andrew and complained about what his policies are doing to the city.
Andrew, let me ask you, and I will ask you, David, as well. We hear this phrase quite a bit. Is Oxford at war with cars?
No, of course not. Oxford is in favour of people. Nobody benefits from congestion. Nobody benefits from danger. Nobody benefits from poor air. Everybody benefits from greater footfall in the city centre. Everybody benefits from a nicer environment, from better bus services, from electric buses, from less congestion, from less conflict between vehicles. You've got Councillor Henwood sitting alongside me. Your listeners can hear the kind of arguments that he is now making. I won't even respond to the statement that he's associating me with increased fatalities. I mean, that's just the kind of level that the opposition are at. Similarly with their, behaviour yesterday, turning up to an important event about something completely different and choosing to stand there banging sticks on the ground. That's what they've got. What we will do is look at facts and evidence. The congestion charge will be monitored properly over a month. We will look at the park and ride uptake. We will look at bus usage. We will look at the impact of the new bus services. Huge improvements to bus timetables already introduced as a direct result of the policies that we are taking.
Okay.
This is a better Oxford and a better Oxfordshire for everybody.
David, do you think Oxford
I
is
think
at
there
war
are
with
better
cars?
models in place. I mean, take, for example, the JR, the Churchill and the university hospitals, where parking charges are tiered by income. So the lowest paid staff pay £69 and the highest earners £345.
So you almost want like a key worker levy or a sort of...
Yes, it's for those staff. So you've got lower paid workers that earn less than 14,000 and you've got higher paid workers that pay more at the JR and the other hospitals. And that income goes towards subsidising bus journeys to and fro the other hospitals. So it is a system that is both a carrot and a stick and works. It introduces more buses and gets people away from cars.
And I suppose
That's
it's
not
easier
a bad
when it's, when you're on hospital land with hospital car parks. That's
Correct.
maybe quite easy to roll out.
Yeah.
Andrew, is that even, a possible kind of idea for the whole city?
Well, I think this is very interesting because, what happens is when you start to talk to people who actually think about the issues here, what Councillor Henwood has just described is a workplace parking levy. It is about using a system of charging in order to manage demand for space. That is exactly what he has just described.
But it's not £600, Andrew. It's not £900.
Don't interrupt me, please, David. And those figures have not been published yet. So that is exactly what the proposal is there to do. And of course, we're working very closely with the hospital trusts around managing their estate. Obviously, it's perfectly clear that those organisations generate a huge number of movements every day. Of course they do. And a key part of our policy, the parking situation around the hospitals is terrible at the moment. I think everybody knows that. It has bad effects for patients, for staff, and we want to make sure that the space that is available there is available to the people who need to use it. And, a key part of our policy is to work towards a system where there are alternatives for members of staff who can do this to get there by other means. And that in itself depends on enabling buses, shuttles, that kind of thing, to flow freely. And that, in turn, depends on reducing congestion. It all comes down to the same thing.
Okay, I mean, we are going to continue with both of you both sticking around, which I really appreciate. And in an hour's time, we'll be taking some questions. So if you've got something to say on what you've just heard, on the congestion charge, on the traffic filters, or also on the workplace parking levy, I would love to hear from you this morning. You can text me 81333. Further away in the future, it's not due to come into force until spring 2028. which is probably quite useful because right now councillors do not agree on whether these schemes are right for Oxford. Back in the studio with me now are Councillor David Henwood, who backed the motion to oppose these measures last night, and Councillor Andrew Gant, the County Council's Cabinet Member for Transport Management. Now, without going right back into it today, David will just repeat for people who weren't listening an hour ago that you did get defeated last night. This measure didn't go through.
Yes, we were. Yes.
And so what next?
What next? Well, we keep fighting. We keep opposing Andrew Gant, Liberal Democrats and Labour's proposal for the bus filters coming in later this year. We think they're unfair, we think they're expensive, and we think they're actually wrong.
But yeah, it got defeated last night, so are you confident that enough people are with you against these measures?
Well, you only have to look at the consultation document the last time round with the congestion charge. 74% of the people that submitted feedback in the congestion charge were against the scheme. Clearly, Oxford does not want this scheme.
Andrew, I mean, you've said before people felt ignored by that consultation, but you said you did listen, you did look, every message was looked at and considered.
Yes, that's absolutely right. In my role, I spend a great deal of time evaluating feedback of that kind and engaging very closely, with individuals and with key sectors in our city, but in the end, the policy of this administration is clear. It's based on the Local Transport Connectivity Plan, which is the overarching document, which was passed unanimously, when Labour were in coalition with us and the Greens in the County Council, voted for by all councillors in the County Council at that time. And then, once you adopt your vision, and then you bring forward the policies, and that is what we are doing here. And these schemes make Oxford a better place. There's no question about that.
Now, there's lots of messages coming in, particularly on the congestion charge. And if you do want to say anything to either Andrew or David, you can do. 81333 is my text number. Start your message with the word Oxford, or you can call us 0808 100 9100. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about this press event yesterday by the Lib Dems in Oxford's Covered Market, but was met with protests by a group of independent business owners who oppose this congestion charge scheme. This is Harriet, who works at the Nothing store in the market.
We have noticed a real negative downturn in our takings over the last 2 to 3 weeks since the congestion charge came in. Some days we've been 70% down on previous. I'm comparing one day to a day a week before the congestion charge, and that's why we already struggle, and this has just made it so much worse. It's like a ghost town in Oxford through the week. It's really had a negative impact.
And Layla Moran from the Liberal Democrat MP for Oxford West and Abingdon was also there and said she agreed with the congestion charge on principle, but suggested more work could be done to support businesses.
I think the devil of these policies is in the detail. So what I was hearing from these businesses was the timing of it, the uncertainty around it, the fact that it was introduced before the Botley Road was open means that actually parking at the West Gate is made more difficult, which is perhaps putting local footfall off. What they're saying is they're not seeing a drop-off in international visitors. They're seeing it's still a busy centre of town. We saw that as we were walking in, and weekends are okay, but it is affecting them during the week. And these are the kinds of details that, as the local MP for the Covered Market, I need to hear. It's only been since the last boundary change, since the last election, that I was the MP. As you know, I then went off to have a baby. So I'm now back, and I'm really keen to engage with these businesses. I think it's so important that we understand the detail. It's how I went about helping to solve the businesses down the Botley Road when the Botley Road shut, and we got them those payments in the end. There were things we could do. I'm intent on doing the same for these businesses in the centre of town.
So Andrew Gant, the councillor in charge of these schemes, these businesses saying, quite a significant, up to 70% down. How much does that concern you? How much do you think that is a direct result of these new measures?
Well, of course, it's very important to get this feedback and to analyse what everybody is saying to us about the effect of these changes. And, it's terrific to have Layla engaging as she always does, absolutely wonderful MP. And we're so lucky to have her. She said she's done wonderful work on the issues around the Botley Road, a completely different scheme, of course, and, with completely different
Sure, but both of these schemes are impacting businesses in the city.
But, in the end, Sophie, the way that you make policy and the way that you make decisions is on the basis of evidence and fact. The scheme has been in for 3 weeks. It was very carefully designed, very carefully modelled. The range of permits and exemptions is very considerable. And, when this scheme was last brought forward about 4 or 5 years ago by the previous county administration, there were no permits, no exemptions. It was buses and taxis only. That was roundly supported by the Labour City Council. You can find those statements to that effect. We've done something different here. And what we will do is we will measure and we will analyse the effect according to fact, and we will monitor that over time to see what the effect has been. What has happened to footfall in the city centre? Your caller there described a ghost town. I don't recognise that. I've been in Oxford every day. That's not what I'm seeing. But, the test is numbers, evidence, fact, and we will look carefully at those after a month of data.
But there is numbers and evidence of fact, and there's also people's feelings and views and opinions. David, do you feel like the people you're talking to say they're being listened to?
Absolutely not, Sophie. So we've interviewed both managers at the Westgate Centre, Cowley Centre, and here in Oxford at the Covered Market. Just yesterday we interviewed 11 store holders. So clearly they are very, very concerned that their income is failing. They're very concerned that they're going to be out of business in the new year. They're very concerned about this particular administration moving forward and introducing yet more fines, yet more layers of problems that will impact lives in Oxford.
Now, interestingly, a lot of the messages coming in this morning, Andrew, are mentioning the congestion outside, around the ring road. This is what the majority are on my screen right now. Anonymous in Abingdon says the congestion is still there, just in a different situation. The situation has moved. I feel extremely sorry for the shopkeepers. This one from Kendo says, I walk my dog early around Cowley and Holloway every morning. There's loads of early traffic before the charge time starts. So all that's happened is that people are going to work earlier. Same amount of traffic just at 6 a.m, not 7 a.m. Scrap this nonsense and stop wasting our council tax. I know it's early days, but is there any evidence that it is actually reducing, or are people sneaking in early?
Well, look, you've just said, is there any evidence? And, I have said we will analyse the evidence when we have a run-in and have enough time to look at it properly over a month. That's what we were going to do. But look, let's be clear, the modelling for this scheme, predicted certain outcomes, and we will be testing that.
And one of those was more congestion on the ring road.
Yeah, it didn't. Yes, I was going on to make that point. Nobody ever said that this scheme would solve everything. Oxford is a constrained city with essentially a medieval street layout with a huge amount of competition for road space. That doesn't change. What this scheme does is seek to address congestion at the places where congestion is worst, at St Clement's, at the Plain, at Magdalen Bridge, at Longwall Street, at Marston Ferry Road. But it was never claimed that it was going to solve everything. There is too much competition for space. Yeah. And a key part of this is that this scheme delivers real benefits in terms of alternatives. And we really want to just point out to people, come on, there is a better way to do this. There may be options that will work for you, like a free park and ride. Lots of people have been taking advantage of that. But it takes time, for those changes to bed
But it's
in.
also sort of affecting people. So this is from Graham, who's not coming into the city. He's just trying to go past. And he said it affects all of us who live and work around the county, not just the city. I was queuing for 15 minutes from Councillor to the Woodstock roundabout the other day at lunchtime. How is that good for the environment or business?
Well, I'll say again, we have to wait and look at evidence, but nobody is pretending that there were not queues on the Cutteslowe and Wolvercote roundabouts before the congestion charge came in. This is my area, the area that I represent. There is huge pressure on our road network, and the solution to that from a responsible highways authority is to try and make alternatives to the private car attractive and available, and we are doing that.
All right, David, one more for you.
Yes.
If the statistics and the analysis do show it's working, what then for you?
If it's showing that it's working, absolutely fine. But the facts on the ground are that in St Clement's it hasn't worked. We still have congestion in the St Clement's area. And one way of resolving that issue would be to remove the LTN scheme and introduce some one-way streets in that area. in addition to that, we would like to see an additional park and ride system up by the Unipart site that would also service the new Cowley branch line that would come in and facilitate entry into Oxford via the Cowley Road. So these schemes, we have alternatives. We just don't see the stick working.
All right, well, there's plenty more to talk about. If you want to go read more about either of those, the traffic filters or the workplace parking levy, both potential future schemes for Oxford, you can do at bbc.co.uk. Andrew, you had your hand up again?
Yes. Sorry, teacher. Just to get in the last word there. But, interesting to hear David say that if it has reduced congestion on St Clements, he will support the scheme.
No, I didn't say that, Andrew, at all.
I don't agree.
Like to see alternatives,
I don't agree with you that putting 6,000 cars back in Divinity Road, which is a narrow residential road, is the solution. Go and stand outside Larkrise Primary School in the LTN and look at all the children walking and cycling to school. It's an amazing sight. And again, you come back to saying, let's improve the park and rides. We are doing that. That
You're
is what this
by
scheme
policy.
is
You're
doing.
blinkered
That
by
is what this scheme is
You
doing.
believe policy
in the
rules
end,
rather than
in the-
adapt and change
in the
and
end,
accept people's
what
views.
all politicians who think about the issues do is they come to the same conclusions. We need to improve public transport and reduce congestion. Your own manifesto said, let's make park and rides free.
I'm an independent. I don't have a manifesto.
Your programme, I don't know what you call it, for elections said, let's make the park and rides free.
But before
We
elections,
have
Andrew,
done
did you
that.
advertise the fact that you would be introducing a congestion scheme? I think not.
We have been very clear about what the direction of our policy is. We are delivering it, making a better city. And if you
All
think
right,
that
you two. I don't think we're
You're
ever going to
failing.
get you two to agree, but thank you both for coming in and having a healthy discussion with us and taking people's questions as well. And we will continue to talk about this. 81333 on the text. Start your message with the word Oxford, and you can tell me what you think.